We represent a number of photographers, both amateur and professional, in the course of our business practice. And the most frequently asked question is whether or not it's illegal to video record or photograph a police officer who is conducting a traffic stop or a public arrest. Now, there's a lot of confusion, but the law has been the same, and a recent case out of the First Circuit Court of Appeals has done a really great job of clarifying all of the issues and nicely laying out what your rights are as a photographer to film the police. I'm going to cut right to the chase, and I'm going to give you what the law is, and then I'm going to talk briefly about this case. And when I'm done, if you're interested in obtaining a copy of the judge's order, which I do recommend because it's a straightforward read and it really hits all of the issues that most photographers deal with throughout the course of their career. I'll give you information how to contact me, and I can send you a free copy of the order. Let's get back to what the law is. You are allowed to film police officers who are engaged in their public duties, right, as a peace officer. And that means you can film them if they're conducting a traffic stop, if they're doing an arrest, having a public arrest. You are permitted to film them. You have to do so in a reasonable manner, in a peaceful manner, and you can't interfere with their investigation. In fact, the controlling case law says, and I just want to read you this one piece, protecting the rights of information gathering not only aids in the uncovering of abuses, but also may have a salutary effect on the functioning of government more generally. Those First Amendment principles apply equally to the filming of a traffic stop and the filming of an arrest in public. In both instances, the subject of filming is police carrying out their duties in public. A traffic stop, no matter the additional circumstances, is inescapably a police duty carried out in public. Hence, a traffic stop does not extinguish an individual's right to film. So what does that mean? Well, that means that barring some very rare exceptions, which I'll get to in a second, you are permitted to film a police officer engaged in his public duties. So if he's arresting somebody out in public, pulling somebody over, film. You're absolutely entitled to film under your First Amendment rights. Now, the only exception, and I'm going to go back to the case, the only exception is where a police officer or other official deems the situation to be so volatile or unsafe for himself and for you that they prohibit people from being in a particular area, right? We've all seen it on TV, and the police put up the yellow tape and nobody's allowed inside that perimeter. You can still film from outside the perimeter, but that's the only time that you can be asked to step back and to not be within a particular area. The case says an individual's exercise of the right to film a traffic stop cannot be limited. A traffic stop is worlds apart from an arrest, and this observation reflects the Supreme Court's acknowledgement in Fourth Amendment cases that traffic stops may especially be fraught with danger to police officers and then justify more invasive police action that would be permitted in other settings. Reasonable restrictions on the exercise of the right to film may be imposed when circumstances justify. And they're talking about reasonable orders to maintain safety and control, which have incidental effects on an individual's exercise of the First Amendment rights. So basically what this case is saying is that unless there's some very, very good reason why a police officer would limit your ability to be in an area or film, you have a First Amendment right to film away so long as the officer is operating or conducting his duties in a public forum. So in other words, you can't go follow the police officer into somebody's house when he's arresting them, but in public, you are free to take as many pictures as you want. All right, now I want to get into the specifics of the case, and you can read more about the case on our blog or by clicking the link below. The name of the case, or the plaintiff's name, is Carla Garicki, and what happens is quite interesting. She is operating a motor vehicle on a highway in New Hampshire, and she's following another vehicle. That vehicle is exceeding the speed limit and gets pulled over by a police officer. Carla pulls behind that car. When the officer approaches Carla because he feels intimidated with the fact that there are two cars that he's got to control, she explains that she's traveling with the first car. He directs her to move, and she moves her car to an adjacent parking lot. She gets out of the car, takes out a video camera, and starts filming the traffic stop. The police officer calls for backup, and when backup arrives, they approach Carla and they ask her for identification. She says, "I'm not operating my vehicle. Why do you want my license and registration?" Ultimately, they arrest her. They charge her with resisting arrest, interfering with a police investigation, and believe it or not, violation of New Hampshire state's wiretapping law. And this stems from the fact that she was taking a video of the police officer. Carla ultimately gets a lawyer, and she sues the police officers and the police department for violations of her First Amendment rights and other constitutional rights. Her argument is that she didn't violate the wiretapping law, that she has the ability under the First Amendment to film a police officer engaged in public duty. And there's a lot of complexity to the case that I will save for the text that's on the blog. But let me just explain quickly that the officers try to allege that they were unaware of the law and that qualified immunity applies to them, and therefore the case should be dismissed. Qualified immunity, which we talk about in another video, is simply a mechanism where police officers and other people, public servants, have this limited right to sue them, and if they make a mistake, so long as they're not grossly negligent, they're immune from civil liability. So the police officers argue that, and the district court says, no, this is a clear violation of constitutional rights, so you're not going to be able to dismiss the case on qualified immunity. They appeal, and it goes to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. First Circuit Court of Appeals says exactly what the law is, that Carla Garicki was permitted to film. She was doing so in a legal, lawful manner. She wasn't obstructing the investigation. She wasn't interfering in any way. There was no reasonable order or request from the police due to an overwhelmingly dangerous situation to stop filming, and therefore she was in her right to film. Now, this is a very important case because it clearly highlights what your rights are as a photographer. I told you at the beginning of the video that I'd give you some information so that you can obtain a copy of the judge's order, and I really suggest that you do it. It's free, no obligation. I want you to have it so that you can refer to it, because the judge's order cites some of the prior cases where the law is clarified. So if you're interested in obtaining a copy of the order, you can either give me a call at 973-949-3770, or feel free to email me at plamont@peterlamontesq.com. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.